The human brain is a relentless pattern recognition machine. It instinctively searches for order in the noise, attempting to impose structure even when none exists. Look at this sentence. Wholeness quiets infinite phenomena. You try to parse the syntax for insight, but it's an algorithm, perfect grammar, zero semantic content. This exposes a severe vulnerability in how we process information. Because a sentence maintains a coherent grammatical shape, our minds frequently confuse the rhetorical inflation of language with genuine wisdom. To solve this, we can map this exact hierarchy of epistemic value. By synthesizing contemporary research in cognitive psychology, linguistics, and epistemology, we can build a formal framework that permanently separates true profundity from pseudo-philosophical mimicry. When speakers lose the responsibility to ensure their statements are truth-apt, the standard for communication itself begins to dissolve. Without a formal method to detect this vacuity, the structural integrity of public and intellectual discourse has no protection against total collapse. The modern philosophical baseline for evaluating empty language comes from Frankfurt. His framework rests on a strict distinction between two types of deceptive actors, the liar and the bullshitter. The liar is entirely constrained by truth. To deceive effectively, they must possess conviction about the facts to intentionally subvert them. The bullshitter operates under no such constraint. Their defining trait is absolute indifference to truth values. Their sole focus shifted to impression management. This indifference triggers a total collapse of what philosophers call assertoric force. Sentences that appear to be making specific claims about the real world are actually functioning as pure rhetorical ornaments designed solely to impress the listener. This makes bullshitting vastly more corrosive than lying. A lie misleads you about a specific fact. Bullshit erodes the very concept of truth as a necessary standard for communication. When we look at the empirical psychology behind why educated people accept these rhetorical ornaments, we find a phenomenon called illusory pattern perception. Because a statement uses abstract buzzwords wrapped in a correct grammatical structure, the listener assumes a point is being made. To resolve the ambiguity, the brain projects its own personal, meaningful associations onto the empty text. The listener mistakes their own effort to find meaning for actual depth in the source. The cognitive reflection test measures the tendency to override a gut feeling for analytical scrutiny. High scores predict the ability to reject vacuity. Conversely, low scores rate randomly generated buzzwords as profound, correlating heavily with epistemically suspect beliefs like conspiracy theories. Perceiving deep meaning in random abstract nouns is not an indicator of an open mind. It is a symptom of an epistemic failure to apply necessary logical filters to incoming information. The philosopher Daniel Dennett identified a highly specialized linguistic weapon within this space. He categorized it as the dipidity. A dipidity uses a two-level semantic structure. The first reading is true but trivial, like stating love is just a word grammatically. The second is profound but false, implying the emotion is fiction. Listeners mistakenly use the trivial truth to validate the false claim. This architecture dominates political and social discourse. Statements like, science is just another belief system, or no human being is illegal, leverage this exact ambiguity to bypass critical scrutiny. By presenting an undeniable tautology, a dipidity lulls the listener into a complacent slumber, giving the mere appearance of solidity to pure wind. While the bullshitter is indifferent to truth, the obscurantist actively weaponizes it. They utilize dense, impenetrable jargon to deliberately mask a lack of insight, suggesting a hidden depth that audiences must struggle to uncover. The success of obscurantism relies entirely on a mechanism called psychological loss aversion. Once an individual expends immense intellectual effort deciphering a difficult text, their ego investment spikes. Admitting the text might be empty of meaning becomes a severe psychological blow, representing a total waste of their effort. This creates a trap of hermeneutic entrapment. To avoid this loss, the reader becomes a co-creator of the insight. They project meaning onto the obscurity and aggressively defend the impenetrable jargon as a necessary feature of the text's multidimensional depth. Refusing to engage with elusive jargon is a token of intellectual courage. Demanding semantic clarity is the first step toward dismantling the obscurantist's game. If we strip away the indifferent bullshit, the ambiguous deepities, and the trap of obscurantism, we are left with the challenge of defining genuine depth. Historically, analytic philosophy has struggled to formalize what makes a statement truly profound. However, by synthesizing the models of philosophers Peter Kivy and Bence Nanai, we can establish a strict three-part criteria for evaluating legitimate profundity. First, fulfilling Kivy's requirement, the statement must contain truth-apt content that addresses core human values or the fundamental structures of reality. It must be about something objectively significant. Second, fulfilling Nanai's requirement, the statement must lack fluency. It must actively challenge straightforward interpretation, possessing a richness that nudges the audience out of unreflective consumption and forces them into active, Type 2 cognitive processing. Profundity results in verifiable epistemic progress. The emotional shiver often associated with depth is secondary to the actual acquisition of new understanding. The primary obstacle preventing highly educated individuals from recognizing this kind of epistemic progress is known as the banality objection. This chart models aesthetic bias. Just as complex rhetorical dazzle can cause us to overestimate the wisdom of vacuous bullshit, a blunt deflationary register can cause us to drastically underestimate the value of a profound truth. When analysts extract the core truth from a massive work of art or a complex system, the direct articulation often sounds hopelessly stark. We frequently mistake the difficulty of articulating a concept cleanly for a lack of underlying insight. A simple re-articulation is not a neutral piece of evidence. Assuming that clarity and simplicity equate to triviality is the ultimate trap for the overeducated mind. The goal of identifying profound truth is to grasp the dependency relations within a system. This cognitive success allows an agent to anticipate how changes in one variable will cascade through the entire structure. Achieving this relies on strict critical reflection. Epistemologists like John Stuart Mill argued that actively double-checking our unreflective responses to the world is the only rational filter we have against the bewitchment of intelligence by language. Modern therapeutic frameworks like rational emotive behavior therapy operationalize this process. They teach individuals to explicitly run logical and empirical disputations against their own thoughts, protecting them from the psychological turmoil caused by uncritically accepting irrational or pseudo-profound claims. Insight of this depth is often irreversible. Once the mind apprehends a fundamental truth, recognizing the systemic causality or relational nature of a phenomenon, the previous worldview disintegrates. The individual becomes unable to return to ignorance without a loss of internal integrity. Prioritizing truth conduciveness over rhetorical dazzle is a deliberate choice. In an ecosystem of impression management, the ability to discern content from vacuity is the primary mechanism for maintaining the integrity of human communication.